James didn't yell. He just stood there, frozen in the garage, staring at the brand new black SUV. The engine was still warm. The dealership's red bow was on the hood, tilted sideways, like a joke. Monica was barefoot, holding the keys like a kid caught stealing. "It was a great deal," she whispered. James didn't answer. His eyes dropped to the loan papers on the floor. 52-0. Their bank balance? 126.42. The mortgage? Due in 2 weeks. And the silence between them? Louder than any fight. A single thought throbbed in his head like a pulse. "We're pretending so hard to be rich, we might lose everything." James got the raise on a Thursday. It wasn't massive, but it was enough to feel like a shift. A few $100 extra each month. The kind of raise that makes you believe you're finally catching up. They told themselves it was time to breathe, to loosen the grip, to stop living like they were still in survival mode. So they started spending. It began with dinner at the new place downtown. They hadn't been out in weeks. Then came Monica's new phone. Her screen had been cracked for months. James bought shoes that didn't squeak on tile floors. None of it felt excessive. It felt deserved. For years they had said no. Now they started saying maybe. And then yes. They upgraded their streaming plan. Added 2 new subscriptions. Got a nicer coffee machine. Ordered better groceries. Organic milk. Name brand detergent. Little things that made life feel just a bit more polished. Then came the weekend brunches. Once a month turned into twice. Once they realized how easy it was to spend 60 without noticing, it somehow became easier to do again. They didn't talk about budgets. Didn't check the account balance before swiping. They weren't being reckless. They were just tired of feeling behind. They felt like normal people now. People with options. People who deserve to look nice, eat well, and live in spaces that made them feel good. It wasn't about showing off. It was about catching up. They had spent so long watching others move ahead, friends with renovated kitchens, curated wardrobes, international vacations. Now, they were finally part of the conversation. Or so they thought. Monica started noticing small changes in herself. She felt more confident when dropping the kids at school. She stood taller when chatting with moms who wore designer sunglasses. She bought new shoes, neutral, sleek, quiet luxury. James noticed it too. People treated him differently when he wore a new jacket to the office. His coworkers asked if he had been promoted. One even joked, "You're leveling up, huh?" James laughed. But something inside him liked how it felt. There was a kind of energy in being seen. They hosted a dinner party 2 weeks later. Just 4 couples. They served wine that didn't come in a box. Cheese that had names they couldn't pronounce. Monica arranged the table with candles and cloth napkins. Everyone complimented the vibe. One friend asked, "Have you two always been this put together?" Monica smiled. James nodded. That night, after the guests left, they cleaned in silence. Then Monica said softly, "We should think about moving, maybe somewhere with more space, something with better light, maybe even a yard." James didn't argue. He just opened Zillow and began scrolling. That was the start of the slide. Not a free fall. Not a crash. Just a slow, steady slide. Monica started following home decor influencers. They all had calm voices, perfect lighting, endless suggestions for affordable luxury. James began browsing cars during lunch. Nothing wild, just newer models. Something reliable, something more them. Their credit card didn't get paid off that month. Just the minimum. James told himself it was just a timing issue, that they'd catch up next paycheck. Monica bought 2 dresses for a wedding they weren't even attending. One of them stayed in the closet with the tag still on. They both stopped checking their budget app. Not because they forgot, because they didn't want to look. James noticed the growing balance. He told himself it wasn't that bad, that they'd pull back next month. Monica promised she'd stop browsing sales. But then her favorite brand emailed a flash deal. She clicked anyway. They weren't being reckless. They were being quietly hopeful that the math would work itself out, quietly scared to admit it might not. Then came the first small warning. James got declined at the gas station. Just 42. He blamed the pump. Tried another card. It worked. He didn't tell Monica. Just drove to work in silence. Hands tight on the wheel. Mouth dry. It wasn't about the gas. It was about the sinking feeling. The realization that they weren't moving forward. They were just getting better at pretending. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. All he could think about was the silence. The kind that builds when no one wants to talk about money. The kind that grows louder than arguments. They weren't rich, but they were living like people who thought they should be. And underneath it all, he started to wonder what it was really costing them. It started with dust. James was cleaning the attic, looking for a box of winter coats they hadn't touched in years. He opened a bin marked Dad Files. Inside, old tax folders, handwritten check stubs, grocery receipts from the 1980s. He almost closed it. Then he saw it. A small yellowed notebook labeled Household Budget, 1987. He opened it out of curiosity. Rows of neat handwriting. Dates. Expenses. Notes in blue pen. Groceries, 42. Gas, 18. A line under every total. Then one note, underlined twice. Save first, spend what's left. It hit harder than he expected. This wasn't a quote. It was his dad's real voice on paper. A man who never wore designer anything. Who fixed his own car. Who retired debt-free. James sat back on the wooden floor. The dust didn't matter anymore. He flipped pages, one by one. No credit card interest. No miscellaneous splurges. Just clarity. Discipline. A quiet logic. He realized something painful. His dad didn't leave a fortune, but he left a system. And James had ignored it for years. That night, while scrolling online, he stumbled onto a blog. It wasn't flashy, no bold claims. Just a quiet title. Why Wealthy People Don't Look Wealthy. He clicked. It talked about doctors who drive Toyotas, engineers with 2 million net worth but no social media, couples who never upgrade unless something breaks. At the end, it recommended a book, The Millionaire Next Door. James downloaded the audiobook, started listening during his commute. He thought it would be about investing, but it wasn't. It was about behavior, habits, delayed gratification, frugality, control. Every chapter cut deeper. Stories of millionaires who never bought new cars, who budgeted every month no matter how much they earned, who lived simply on purpose. James turned off the audiobook halfway through one morning. He parked early and just sat in the car, hands on the wheel, engine running, mind spinning. He whispered to himself, "We're doing everything backwards." He looked around his dashboard. The leased car, the designer sunglasses Monica had bought him, the gym bag in the back seat, barely used. None of it matched what he was hearing. None of it felt smart anymore. That week, he started making small moves. Returned the 400 watch he had bought on impulse. Packed his lunch 3 days in a row. Canceled 3 subscription zones he barely used. He opened a spreadsheet and tried to track where their money went. It hurt to look. So many small choices that added up to chaos. He didn't tell Monica yet. Not because he wanted to hide, but because he didn't know how to explain it without sounding judgmental. He knew she was trying to feel okay, to feel seen, to feel like they belonged somewhere they never really did. But something inside him had changed. The shame that had been sitting in his chest for months, it started to shift, turned into quiet focus. Fear became fuel. It wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about clarity. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about what to buy next. He was thinking about what to stop chasing and how to finally feel free. James waited 3 days. He needed space to think, to plan what to say without turning it into a lecture. They were sitting at the kitchen table, eating frozen pizza. No TV, just the hum of the fridge. He cleared his throat, mentioned a book, said he'd been listening to something that made sense, talked about how most wealthy people didn't look the part, how they saved more than they spent, how, maybe, they needed to rethink how they were living. Monica blinked, then smiled, half amused, half tired. "Are we broke now?" she said. James didn't laugh. He just said, "Not yet." She didn't say much after that. But that night, she ordered takeout anyway. The next morning, James packed his lunch. Change didn't come all at once. There was no dramatic overhaul, no family meeting, no color-coded charts, just small decisions. James canceled the premium streaming service, returned a pair of shoes still in the box, stopped browsing online shops during lunch breaks. He started using cash, withdrew a fixed amount every week, left his card at home on purpose. Monica watched, didn't comment, didn't follow. Not yet. She called it extreme, said it made life feel tight, said she didn't want to feel punished for trying to enjoy things. They argued, not in shouting matches, but in sighs, pauses, sarcastic jabs. He said they needed structure. She said they needed joy. Neither was wrong, but they were pulling in different directions. Still, something shifted. Their credit card bill was $400 lower that month. James printed the statement, left it on the counter, didn't say a word. Monica saw it the next morning. She didn't say anything either. But that afternoon, she skipped her nail appointment. Later that week, she deleted a shopping app, quietly, without telling James. Not because he asked, because something in her knew it was time. The changes weren't dramatic. She still got coffee with friends, still kept her favorite candle subscriptions. But she started asking herself before every purchase, do I actually need this? Sometimes the answer was no. They weren't in sync yet. But they were no longer stuck. James stopped tracking every penny obsessively, learned to give grace for small mistakes. Monica started asking questions about savings, about debt, about what the next 6 months could look like. They talked more, fought less, still disagreed. But now they were disagreeing about how to move forward, not whether they should. On Sundays, James started cooking at home. Simple meals. Nothing fancy. Just food. They could eat, slowly. Monica lit candles anyway. Not for guests. Just for them. For the first time in a long time, dinner didn't feel like a rush. It felt like a pause. They were still paying off debt, still behind on some bills, still feeling stretched. But now, they weren't drifting. They were making choices. Together. One small win at a time. It was a Wednesday evening. Monica came home later than usual. She looked tired, her eyes heavy. She dropped her purse on the floor, kicked off her shoes, and sat down at the dining table. Didn't even turn the lights on. James asked if she was okay. She didn't answer. Just pulled out her phone. Showed him a photo. Her college friend, standing in front of the Amalfi Coast, wearing a white linen dress, sun on her face, arms outstretched. Caption, "Grateful, free, living my best life." Monica whispered, "I used to dream like that." James didn't know what to say. The silence stretched. Then she said it. "I feel invisible." She wasn't angry, just tired. She said the past few months had felt like shrinking, cutting back, pulling in, saying no. She missed feeling admired, missed looking good, missed the part of herself that felt bright. James tried to explain, tried to talk about goals, about the debt they had cleared, about the momentum they were building. Monica interrupted, her voice quiet but sharp. "You care more about numbers than me." The words sat there between them, not shouted, just placed. James stood up, walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it again, then leaned on the counter, staring at the empty sink. After a moment, he said, slowly, "I don't want to look rich anymore. I just want us to be free." Monica didn't reply. She just sat there. But something cracked, not out of anger, out of truth. The pressure, the comparison, the years of trying to look okay even when they weren't. She saw it all at once, not just in herself, but in James too. They had both been running, just in different directions, trying to prove something to the world, to their friends, even to each other. Letting go of that felt terrifying, like losing a part of herself. But maybe, for the first time, she wanted to lose it. That night, they didn't talk much. They just sat quietly, each in their own thoughts. But something had shifted, not in a dramatic way, just a small tilt, a new weight, a quiet agreement neither had the words for. Monica opened her laptop before bed, canceled 2 subscription boxes, closed the tab on her favorite fashion site. She didn't tell James. She just did it. Because maybe she was starting to believe freedom wasn't in the things they owned. It was in the things they could finally let go of. There was no big speech, no reset button, no dramatic "let's do this" moment, just a slow shift. Monica canceled her gym membership, started walking in the mornings. No headphones, no playlist, just her thoughts and the sound of her own breath. James stopped checking Zillow, stopped daydreaming about houses they couldn't afford. He unsubscribed from every sales email in his inbox, turned off all retail notifications on his phone. They sold the SUV, took a loss, but paid off the balance. They bought a used sedan, 10 years old, no touchscreen, no camera, just a car that worked. The first time Monica drove it, she cried. Not because it was old, but because of what it meant. Letting go of image, of expectations, of stories she had told herself for years. They moved out of their townhouse, found a smaller apartment, 2 bedrooms, less light, less noise, lower rent, no backyard, no trendy zip code. But it was theirs, and it was quiet. They bought secondhand furniture, kept their old mattress, reused pots and pans from college, Monica resisted at first, but she noticed something strange. She started sleeping better, started feeling calmer. There was less to clean, less to organize, less to manage, and somehow more peace. They made coffee at home, watched movies on a laptop in bed, laughed at old photos they hadn't looked at in years. James started offering tech help to small businesses on weekends. Nothing fancy, just steady side work. Enough to build a small emergency fund. Monica started a newsletter. She called it Less But Hours. Just one email a week. Thoughts on simplicity, contentment, and honest living. At first, no one read it. She wrote anyway. They started using cash again. Went back to grocery lists. Stopped throwing away half-used condiments. They tracked what they spent without fear. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't feel behind. They weren't rich, but they weren't anxious. They weren't flashy, but they weren't pretending. And the weirdest part? They started having fun again. They joked more, argued less, still disagreed, but without bitterness. Because now, they were on the same side, same goals, same language, same values. They didn't need outside approval, didn't need their lives to look a certain way on social media, didn't care about looking successful. They were building something of their own. And every small decision, every small habit became a brick in the foundation. They were still learning, still failing sometimes, still tempted. But they were no longer stuck. They were no longer drifting. They were choosing. Together. 1 year later. No debt. No drama. No rush. Their bank account didn't have 6 figures, but it had breathing room. They had 28, 0 saved. Not an accident, just discipline. Just boring, consistent choices. They still lived in the smaller apartment. Still drove the same used car. Still wore the same jackets from last winter. But their life felt different. Lighter. Quieter. More aligned. James woke up early now. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. He made coffee. Read a chapter of a book. Walked for 20 minutes before work. He didn't scroll Zillow anymore. Didn't fantasize about bigger, newer, shinier. He was busy living the version of life that felt honest. Monica still wrote her newsletter. A few hundred subscribers now. Nothing viral. No ads. Just real words. Shared weekly. She didn't post photos of fancy meals anymore. Didn't chase the perfect corner of the living room to impress someone online. Instead, she posted a quote once. "We gave up looking rich so we could feel free." No hashtags, no likes count. Just truth. They still tracked expenses. Still used cash. Still told each other before any big purchase. They still felt tempted sometimes. Old habits whispered, "You deserve it. Everyone else has one. Why not just this once?" But now, they knew how to answer. Because peace costs less. Because quiet joy is better than loud approval. Because freedom feels better than image. Last week, James helped a younger coworker return a leased car. The guy had just gotten married. Was stressed. Felt embarrassed. James didn't judge. He didn't quote a book. He just said, "I've been there. Here's what worked for us." Monica spoke at a local event. Small group. Library basement. She called it "Why We Chose Less." Only 5 people came. She stayed after, answered questions. One woman cried. Another signed up for her emails. Monica walked home with James and said, I think that's the first time I've ever felt truly proud. They weren't millionaires. Not yet. But they had something better than appearance. They had alignment. With themselves. With each other. With what actually mattered. They stopped chasing the life that looked good and started living the one that felt good. They were no longer trying to prove anything, and in doing so, they had quietly become what they never thought they could be. The kind of people no one notices. No flash, no noise, but strong, calm, grounded. The kind of people who build wealth slowly, live well quietly, and sleep peacefully at night. Not because they have it all, but because they finally understand what they need was never more. It was just less. Less pressure, less debt, less pretending, more peace, more space, more freedom. That's what wealth looked like now, and they were already living it.